The first Orphan has one of the greatest twist endings I've ever seen in my entire life. 13 years later, we get a prequel, Orphan First Kill. Is it 13 years too late? Let's discuss. Orphan First Kill stars Isabella Fuhrman, Julia Stiles, Ross of Sutherland, and is directed by William Brent Bell. What's up, guys? Time for a brand new 2022 review. Surprisingly, this is for another Orphan movie. Like I said in the intro, 13 years later, we get a new Orphan movie directed by William Brent Bell, who did The Boy, which I like The Boy. I think The Boy's got a really cool third act. I hated Brahms' The Boy too. So with him directing this movie, it could have went either way for me. There's a lot to discuss with this movie, okay? This will be spoiler free, and I will say, this is a tough movie to do spoiler free, but I'm gonna give it my best shot.
That's the story of it. The story of it. The story of it. The story of it.
The mother protects her family.
So anyway, first off, let's give you a quick plot synopsis. Now I'm going to assume that all of you, every single one of you, even you on the left and the right, have seen the original Orphan, okay? So I'm going to assume that you know that beautiful twist that's at the end of that movie, all right? So going forward, that is the one spoiler that I have to discuss that, okay? But that's from the first movie, so that's fair game anyway. Why would you go into this movie not having known the twist, not having seen the first movie, right? Anyway. So, quick plot synopsis. We all know from the first movie that Esther is a full-grown adult, right? So how do you play around with that? And so we get to see her at the beginning of this movie in the institute that she's at. I think it's Sarnia. I think it's Sarnia, something like that. She's at this pretty much this mental ward, and she is the most dangerous patient there. The way she escapes out of this is ridiculous, and this would be the worst guard in the history of mankind. But there's a con for you, okay? I'll go ahead and give you a little nugget. That's a con nugget. But anyway, yeah. So she escapes, and eventually she ends up with this new family. And again, this is a prequel to the previous movie, who live in Connecticut. All right, and the mother is played by Julia Stiles. They have this teenage son who is into fencing. You're pretty much thinking that this is going to be kind of the same type story as the first movie, right? And I will say, up to a point, I'm checking out of this movie. You know, I'd say the first third of the movie, I'm thinking, this is not going to be a good movie. I was comparing it to The Descent Part 2. Remember, quality-wise, The Descent Part 2, not nearly as good as the first movie. That's the way this one felt like it was going to be. But the family's name is Trisha and Alan, and I do like how this family, Trisha, Julia Stiles, you know, they lost a daughter, and Esther, she finds a way to get into another family by searching these missing children. And it just so happens to be this family's child that looks very similar to her. And this would be 4 years later. And so they have their daughter back, and they think it's their daughter, but it's not. It's Esther. So I do like how they did that to kind of, I guess, set the pieces, you know, set the table. Also, there's some nice bloodshed in this movie, and it pretty much is scattered throughout. They're not holding back whatsoever. I think Esther's even more vicious in this one, and it's more straightforward than like in the last movie where she was much more of a schemer in the last one. Yeah, the scheming's definitely in this one, but in the last one, they waited until the third act to really let loose and show you how violent she could be. Whereas in this one, she's violent all the way through the movie. You can take that as a pro or a con, you know, take your pick. Jumping into the pros and cons, I will start out by saying what I loved about this movie was I guess the writing, the story. There's somewhere along the way in this movie where it takes a turn. Story-wise, you could call it a twist, because it's definitely a twist. And let me just give you kind of a good example of why this worked, because the audience was silent, completely silent. And then something happened in this movie, and it's like everybody sat up in their chair. And I started hearing a lot more laughing in a good way. Just the audience was getting much more vocal. They were really into where this story was going at a certain point, including myself. I was like, okay, now I'm in. I like what they're doing now, and so I have to give credit to the writing of this movie. They really sent this in a direction different from the first movie that made it, I think, quite entertaining and fun. There was quite a few moments in this movie where I'm thinking, this is kind of like the female Chucky. This feels kind of like what you would do in a Chucky movie. Just really, really fun. And you remember that scene in the last movie where you could see Esther's playful side, her foul mouth. When Vera Farmiga, she's talking about what, sex and what a mother and a father would do. And then Esther says, they fuck. It was just a really funny scene. You're going to get stuff like that in here too. I don't think the jokes are as good, as surprising as that movie, because now we know that she's a grown adult. But I love that from a writing standpoint, they were able to say, okay, we know the audience knows this, so where can we take this story to keep them interested? And I think they succeed for sure. And I do think Isabella Fuhrman had a great time with this role. You could tell that they had to use, a child actor in some of the wide shots, especially when you see her from behind, because I'm pretty sure Isabella Fuhrman isn't as short as the character should be. So there was definitely some strategic framing throughout. And that's not a con. I just definitely wanted to mention Isabella Fuhrman and her performance. I think she was pretty competent in the role. She's not Rebecca Hall or anything, okay? But I'm sure she was happy to step back into this role. Esther, at this point, she's teetering on icon status, horror icon status, now that you have two movies. Both of them are really fun. Now, I guess let's jump into the cons of the movie. I'll say, production-wise, this is a huge step down from the first movie. The first movie just felt much more A-level, cinematic, beautifully directed, and I could blame it on the budget here, but really also just the direction. I don't think William Britt Bell is as skilled as a director as Yomei Colette-Serra, who directed the first movie. But it's still competent. It's still really fun. Also, just some of the character choices. The last act, even though I loved where the story was going and I loved what they did with these characters, I don't think the payoff was there as far as like what happened in the last act. It does get a little bit over the top and a little bit silly, but still highly entertaining, okay? I mean, at the end of the day, this is a popcorn movie, guys. That's pretty much what this is. Whereas I think the first movie was a little bit more highbrow, for sure. Still, beautifully directed, highly entertaining. And, this still stays in that wheelhouse, but it feels more of like a cheeseburger, like a popcorn type of movie. But, you really love the family in the first movie, too, with Vera Farmiga and Peter Sarsgaard. I just think the acting, the talent there was a step up, even though you do have Julia Childs in here. So, in the end, guys, I'm definitely giving this movie I'm going to give it a high humdrum, okay? Very entertaining. I will definitely add it to my Blu-ray collection, my Orphan collection. It's still competent, still very fun. And you know what? That's all I wanted. It was better than I expected, given the time frame between the last movie. And just, from seeing the trailer, it looked like a step down production-wise. But overall, still had a really good time. The audience was loving it, actually. And I was right there with them, So some fun to be had for sure. I wish I could talk spoilers. Maybe I'll talk spoilers. Maybe I'll do a spoiler review. I don't know. Anyway, guys, let me know what you guys think of Orphan First Kill in the comments. Looking forward to hearing them. Also, be sure to come over to Killer Flicks, where we talk horror all day and every day on Fridays. We do free for Fridays. Follow me at Drumdums and on my socials. Support me on Patreon. Buy me a coffee. And guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. Drumdum out.